How we doing? Welcome back. It's good to see everybody who's able to make it to watch the video. You might not be watching it right when it releases, but I do appreciate the support nonetheless. Today's video is going to be a big one. It's going to be a big one. I don't know what it's going to be titled just yet, but we'll figure that one out when I come to editing. But what I first wanted to say is the website's up and running. I got the website up and going. I have knives for order for custom builds. The website's been open for a couple of months now at least. And but with sales being what they are, Ella has been egging me on, just like, you got to remind people that the website's up. I says, you know, YouTube usually doesn't do it as much as if I post on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or Threads or something like that. Then that usually is a more instantaneous announcement and response. But as of today is Monday, August 25th, and the website is open for orders. I am working on another new knife model. Normally I only release one a year. It's been like that for, at least 4 or 5 years now. I put one new knife out a year, but this year I put out the Yeti earlier this year. And then just about a month ago, I put out the Scout, probably only a couple of weeks ago. I released the Scout. Really excited about the Scout. I like the feel of it. I'm finding that it's a really good balance in between some of the larger knives I make, like a camp knife and the Yeti and even a Montana, and the smaller knife, like I do a 307, the Jasper, even that medium-sized knife is being a pup. The Scout is still out of D2, and it's still 3/16 inch thick. D2 is what I make it out of, and it comes in at 8 inches long and about 1.5 inches wide. But with the shape of the handle being what it is, it lends itself to being more universally fit. Whereas a pup has a little bit more of that belly and the curve, more of a shapely handle and stuff. And the Jasper and the 307, they end up having a little bit smaller handle for people, and again, somewhat shapely. I went ahead and followed more along the lines, I shouldn't say Jasper, more like the 307 or the Woodsman shank. The Jasper was around 7 inches long and 1.5 inches wide, and it had a more universal fit and feel. It used to be pretty popular for a while. And then I got to thinking, I had some of the steel sitting around here, and I want to make some knives out of the steel that I already have, and it's an actual water-jetted knife blank that I had made up, and it wasn't a very popular knife. And I turned around and made the Scout out of that, and I really, really like the feel of it. I like the fit and the finish. So it's pretty light. I don't have a scale here in the shop. Maybe I'll have to do that on another video sometime, or just put a posting on it. But the knife weights will vary, because you can get it with SureTouch, you can get it with G10, you can get it with micarta, you can get it with various woods, and those all vary in weight, especially with the pins and stuff like that too. So it's probably not too fair to say this is what the weight will be, because it can kind of go from one spectrum to the other. But I see maybe, somebody wanting to know at least a generalization of weight or stuff like that. But anyhow, I digress. I just got some material in stock, and one of them is I did this one. I did the one Scout in orange and G10, and the stuff's made in America, and it's called Ultrex. Ultrex. It's called SureTouch, and made in America, and really nice. It's layers of G10 and rubber, and so even after shaping, and even if it's wet, it seems to have a bit of a tacky feel to it. So it's kind of neat. And I shared a picture with only 3 people, and instantaneously they're like, yeah, I want it, I'll buy it. And then when I shared it on social media, other people were interested in it too, but it had already been spoken for. It was already taken off the website. So So I picked up a slab of orange and black so I can do another knife with it, which I actually am working on right now. I do have some the Scouts. I do have some Scouts on the website right now. I have a couple of them for sale right now on the website. And I'm actually working on 4 more. And 3 of them are going to be in this Sure Touch material. One will be orange and black. The other one's going to be red and black, which I already glued up, but I got another piece of this because I only had one piece of red and black. And then one's going to be in canvas micarta, and another one which is going to be olive drab canvas micarta like this here. And then another one's going to be in camouflage micarta. You guys see I did a couple of knives in that in the past. So I did another one in that. I did some a Yeti. I did a Yeti in it and some others. So yeah, there's the other orange and black. I did a Yeti and a couple other knives in it. So that was nice. And it has the black canvas or paper, phenolic paper micarta is what they call it. Sorry. That's what these are, 1/8" pins for that too. So those knives are coming up. Another one's got curly black walnut on it. And then this one I was looking kind of neat. It's flat dark earth, white and black. And it's very similar to the colors that I did a Scout in, but I did that in G-Carta. I did that in a G-Carta stuff, and that's my Scout. I made one for myself, so I always have one in my kit. And I decided, well, I'll make that one for myself because I really like the G-Carta stuff, and I just wanted to try something different. So I did that, but I bought something similar to the G-Carta. Well, I shouldn't say similar. The colors similar. The material's different. Again, this is layers of G10 and rubber. That's what the Sure Touch is. So I'm looking forward to doing that, and I want to get those knives finished off in that. But the website does have 2 or 3 Scouts on it right now, and when I finish these 4, it will have 4 more Scouts. As well as I'm going to start slowly getting, I'm going to make, I think I got 3 pups that are in the, 3 or 4 pups that I'm going to start rolling out here in the next month or so. And I've just decided I'm just going to start making some knives and putting them up on the website. If I'm making knives, and which is odd, I've been at this now 11 years, and I would make a couple of knives and then they would sell. But then everybody's like, hey, I want a knife, so they would pick everything out. And I built my business on customizing a knife, giving the end user, you guys, the knife you want with whatever I had available at my disposal. And for at least 9 years out of my 11, that's probably been my go-to business model. And it hasn't been all that bad of a business model. It's worked pretty good for me. I have had some down years, and those all happened pretty much since I moved here to Wyoming. Both moving here and then my surgery, building the shop, rebuilding, and then the last couple years haven't been the best. So sales have kind of slumped, and maybe it's because I kind of stepped out of the limelight a little bit, both here on YouTube or I can't say social media in general, because I have been somewhat consistent on Instagram and Facebook. But definitely YouTube. I had stepped away from that, as you quite know if you've been a follower of the channel for the last few years, the last almost decade now on YouTube. But with that going forward, I haven't had a lot of good sales this year. I have had some. I have, had knives made. Oh, I got a piece of wood falling on. I have had some knife sales, but not as many as I'd like, and to be able, have a business. So I decided to go ahead and just start making knives and just put them up on the website for sale. And what's odd is that seems to be working better. Having built the entire website like I have, where I think I have around 80 different custom pins. I have over 80 pins, both decorative, tube, 1/8 inch, 1/4 inch, all that. I have over 80 decorative or 80 pins in general. I have probably 12 species of wood, most of those stabilized, a lot of woods stabilized that were dyed stabilized, so that gives you different colors. Then I have different man-made materials. I have micarta, I have G10, I have SureTouch, I have fire hose. So it's all these things that have been, it's quite interesting. And I think Dutch just ran into the camera. I think he ran into the tripod. With that said, though, it seems like when I make a knife and I put them on the website, they don't last but maybe 2-3 weeks at best, and then they all sell out. So I decided, well, since a lot of folks aren't seeming to want to wait like they used to, and I would have to shut down the website, because as long as I left knives available to order, I would sell knives. And it got to the point where people were 3-4 months out from being able to get a knife. That's how far out I was in orders. But you know, things change. People change their outlook, their expectations, whatever it might be. But so for right now, you can still order knives, and I'll make them as they come in. But right now, I'm just going to start making just knives. Whatever I feel like making, I'm going to make, and I'll put them up on the website. I'm also trying to stay around a certain dollar amount for folks, where some of the knives can get pretty expensive. I like to stay around that $350 mark, thereabout. And again, maybe some people might caca-poo-poo that, say, oh my gosh, it's so expensive. There's a reason why knives cost what they do. And that's one more thing I'd like to touch on real quick in this video. So what I'd like to do is bring in a couple of knives and perhaps maybe give you guys a little bit of insight, because I have a lot of new people here on the channel. So I'd like to kind of show some insight in what's happening and what might be taking place here in the knife world and everything. So starting out with materials, you have stuff like leather. You'll have stuff like this, and you can buy leather and do things of that nature. And that's nice. You do leather sheaths. It does take a lot to do a leather sheath. I'm going to shut this off here. It's a little bit distracting. I'm just gonna. Sorry, I was trying to do something, but it's just too distracting for me right now. So what was I saying? Okay, so what I'd like to do is first start out with, different types of materials and stuff like that, and sizes of knives and costs and in general. A lot of people are like, Chad, why don't you do leather sheaths for all of your knives? Well, that seems to, like a lot of things, it comes and goes with the seasons, what people are feeling like and what they want to do. And leather sheaths, even though they're nice, they can be a little bit more labor intensive for me. I don't make them all the time. And as well as, it seems like as soon as someone says they want a leather sheath, they have this expectation of what they would like, without any idea that what you want actually costs more than what standard leather sheaths other companies are putting out. If you're to go and pick out a leather sheath or pick out a knife, and maybe that website has, let's say this one company in particular, it's kind of the new brand name for nowadays in knife making. They've spent a lot of money and time in marketing and passing out a lot of free stuff. So now they've got a big footprint in the world. You can get a leather sheath from them for like $30, but it's a basic leather sheath. It's nothing really fancy. No fancy stitch, nothing out of the ordinary. And they're like 30 bucks, I think, 25, 30 bucks. And somebody makes them, you know, they make a whole bunch of them, and they're making like 300 of them in a month, 400 sheaths in a month, because every single knife that is made to fit in that sheath, they come off of a conveyor belt. They're production knives. They're made through machines, and there are some of them are assembled by person. You know, they don't glue the handle material together. They take G10, quarter-inch G10 scales, which are basically the panels that you see here on the handles like this. That's what we call scales. They take the scales that have been milled by a CNC machine, and they screw them on. So there's no epoxy, so that's a cost and a time that's not relevant. There's no hand shaping every knife to give you all the ins and outs and the curves and everything like that. They don't do that. And because of that, every single knife that they kick out, they might put 20,000 knives out of one particular model, and they can make 500 sheaths, and no matter what knife you reached in and grabbed off the shelf, it would fit in that sheath. Hopefully that makes sense to you. So automatically, I am not giving you a leather sheath that you're getting from this supposed big box company, this big company. Secondly, taking a company like this in particular, again, I want to start saying names and throwing people in there because I kind of like how they do their business model, and I wish that I had it with me and I had it written down, because I remember talking about how I wanted to see CK Knife and Tool go and become like Wyoming Knife Company kind of thing. And I wanted to do that kind of stuff. And I talked with a few people about it, and it just never came to fruition. Why some things happen to others and not to certain people and not others, I don't know. But you're looking at a knife that this company in particular, they're taking a $300 knife, they're selling you, it's thinner steel, it's a lower grade steel, meaning all my knives are made out of D2 except if it's a kitchen knife, and I do that in CPMS 35VN, and if I can't get that, then I'll do it in CPM 154. But my knives, for instance, like the Scout, I'm making this Scout, and this Scout is in 3/16 D2. Now, if I were to go and pick out, say, for instance, 3/16 52-100, or a ball bearing style steel or something that's marketed and sold, and I were to compare the two, my steel costs more than that steel. So that's already one uphill challenge that someone like me has. Secondary, because I don't buy steel to do like 5,000 knives at a time, I am definitely paying a higher premium than somebody that is buying steel for 5,000 knives, which I think all of you can say that makes sense in that regard. If you get water jetting, if you want to try to operate a business and you have a large production of knives that you want to make, then instead of buying just a big sheet of steel or a bar stock, you can get it water jetted. Now, my steel, the D2, you have to water jet it. Other steels, you can plasma cut, or you can use a laser, CNC laser, and you can get that cut that way. But with D2, you can't do that. You have to do water jetting, so that already changes costs. Secondary is what I've tried to do in my business model is with like production knives, not the Scout, but pups and Yetis and some 307s, I can get those water jetted. So this way I am not paying for a big bar stock of steel anymore. I'm paying for each individual shape, each individual Yeti that's being sent to me. It's already shaped out, and I have to do everything else to it. I have to do a choil or holes in the tangs, the lanyard. I have to blade profile. I have to clean the shape up because it's rough shape, so I have to clean the rest of it. But if you took a piece of steel that was like this piece of steel costs me more than a piece of steel that'd be shaped like this. I know they're two different sizes, but to give you a rectangle of this would cost me more, because not only am I paying for the shipping of more steel, but ultimately I cut that steel away and it gets wasted. Whereas if I water jet it, that steel stays at the factory and they recycle it. Also, I'm not paying for shipping on the weight that I'm going to be cutting and grinding away, or at least most of the weight I'm going to be cutting away, because it already has a similar shape to it. So there are some benefits to water jetting like that. The downfall with that is for me to get any relevant discount, I have to buy several dozens of a Yeti or a pup or something like that. And that gets to be very cost preventative, because now I'm coming out of pocket thousands of dollars, and I haven't made thousands of dollars on the Yeti. I'm investing in that money into this knife in hopes it's going to be successful, which is a whole nother issue to begin with. But what that boils down to is I can't function and I can't compete with big companies like that. But also I can't be compared, and I say I, but I'm including other knife makers like myself, but I don't want to speak on their behalf. I'm just saying I can't compete with companies like that to the north of me, because of the fact that I make everything here in-house as well. Everything is handmade by me, and I make every single sheath. Their sheaths, again, because every single knife is almost the exact same size, within thousandths of an inch, they can have a machine press and make all of their sheaths a lot better than I can. I have to hand make every single knife sheath. I have to drill and rivet each one by hand, shape it, hand sand it, add the tech lock. I do all of it by hand. Now also, I do not screw on my handles. I don't use Corbis bits or these like the little, whatever they call them again, it's like a nut and screw that screws together. You'll see it in an Essie. Essie's a really big brand name that does that kind of stuff. I don't do that. I glue mine on and I use pins, and then I shape every handle myself. There's already his shape. It's a big sheet like this. It's put in a CNC, it's cramped in, and this machine comes and it routers out with real thin bits. It routers out the shape of every single handle exactly the same within a thousandth of an inch. And then the holes were drilled and everything. So then you're taking that off and you're screwing it on the knife, and that's it. Now, I don't want to come off sounding jaded or jealous or anything, because that's a business plan that I've always wanted to do. I actually have another company that I've never taken off the ground, but that was the whole business plan of that company, was to have a production line of most of the knives I make here, but at a production where there are a bunch of them made at one time. I can fulfill orders for companies like Coyote Works, Kit Badger, Milwaukee Tools, Icon Vehicle Dynamics, Dangerous But Good, whomever might inquire about a knife. If there's like, Chad, I want 250 knives, this is what I want them to look. I would work with these companies, do that kind of thing, and kick it out and do that. I have just never had anybody, as like some people have had the fortune to meet individuals that were willing to help invest and help build the company that I'd one day hope to do. So that's that. I don't want to, again, I'm on my soapbox in a way, but I'm trying to compare everything. And what people would say, I'm going to buy a $350 knife from this company. Yes, but 20,000 other people have that exact same knife, and it might have been hand assembled, but it wasn't a handmade knife. It's Cerakoted because it's a cheaper steel, and without that Cerakote, this thing will rust on you in a heartbeat. If you breathe on it and put it away, it's going to be rusty. I use better quality steels, I use thicker steels, and I offer a lot more materials. I offer a lot more attention to detail. I will custom laser engrave a lot of things on an individual's knife. And I even have like 4 different ways to clip a knife onto your sheet, your belt or something like that, where all these companies don't. So I can't really be compared to companies like that, because my business model doesn't match their business model. And it would be unfair for me, and it's unfair for them as well, because they can't be held to my standard because they don't do what I do. And I can't be compared to them and why I pay or why I charge or don't charge a certain price because of them. Honestly, I think a lot of those companies' knives are overpriced quite a bit, because when you look back and you see what they're doing, that money's coming from all the sales of knives. in particular, I just watched a snippet from Matt Gaetz was interviewing one of the CEOs from Boeing. Boeing was always on strike, and it was right during this time period. It was in the last, I think, 5 years or so, last 3 years, Boeing employees got a 1% pay raise. And they got other benefits and stuff, but they got a 1% pay raise. This fella got a 45% pay raise just that 1 year, and he was making almost $33 million a year. Now, granted, he runs the company, but when you have a man that sits there and makes $33 million a year, and his employees are asking for a 5% cost of living increase because most of these people live in Washington State, and if anybody knows about Washington State, it's not easy to live in. And the costs and stuff are pretty bad. So when you look at a guy like that, yes, I'm not saying don't make millions of dollars. I'm not saying that. I wish I could make more money than I do making knives. But what I'm saying is in some way, shape, or form, the individual has to be honest with themselves and say, how much do I actually deserve, and how much could I give back, or how much do I need to charge? Do we need to charge that much for all those planes? Because we know it's not going to the employees as much as it's going to the owner and the CEO and other benefactors. The same thing holds true to some of these knife companies. They might be building or have these huge 50,000 square foot facilities and all this other stuff, and they give away tens of thousands of dollars in product every year, and they do all that stuff. That's nice. I wish I could do that. But also you got to remember that's the cost that you're paying. So it makes it hard for guys like me, where I say I'm trying to make a knife and I'm selling this Scout for $350. Okay, hand make it, do all this other stuff. I don't know how many times I've had people tell me, Chad, I need to raise my prices because of how much everything costs, let alone I'm doing it all. And I say, yes, but I can't, because if I raise my price to what I would think would be a fair wage per hour or anything like that, nobody would ever buy a knife from me, because nobody wants to spend that kind of money. They'll spend $350 on a guy's knife that they have, 20 or 30,000 of them everywhere in the United States, but they seem cool because, hey, so-and-so's got that, and this person's got that hoodie, and that marketing thing, and it's kind of, jazzy and exciting, and I'm not. So that's been a struggle with mine, especially this year, because not only did I have last year's challenges and everything that happened, but now trying to keep the business afloat and do these things, I'm almost trying, like I sit here and I think I'm probably trying to defend myself and saying that, yes, I charge $425. If I was to make this knife for somebody, it's going to probably cost, actually $465 with the custom laser engraving and the materials you pick out, because SureTouch is not cheap. It is not cheap by no stretch of the imagination, but it's really nice. But not a lot of people offer it, and that's why I'm offering it. But if I were to make this knife, I take my materials and I add the materials together and I do this, it's just going to be crazy how much everything costs. Okay, well, I want to get off my soapbox when it comes to knives and all that, because I got to go into the next segue here. And if you haven't already probably detected from the last 20 minutes or so, whatever this is going to be, I have a hard time. I'm having a hard time focusing nowadays, and a lot of that is basically just this last year. I would have never thought, and you hear it all the time, and you see it with other people, or you hear stories and stuff, and I'd have never thought that anything, no matter what it would be, would affect an individual as much as what my family has gone through. And we're just over a year now at Ben's death, and having lost him last year, and then the subsequent problems like myself I was having, and the things that came up out of that after Ben's death, it hasn't been easy. This past week especially has been pretty tough too. We about 4 weeks ago now, it's about a month now, one of Ben's really good friends, they were in school together when we moved here to Wyoming. I didn't homeschool the kids when we moved here. Ben only had 1 year left and Ella had 2. She would have had 3, but they bumped her ahead because she was so, advanced. They said, don't believe the hype when they talk about, when they try to talk bad about homeschooling and stuff like that. Both of my kids could have graduated when we moved here in Wyoming, but they didn't have Wyoming state constitution and then like a music class or something like that, or one other thing. So they made Ben a senior because that was his age. So he did that, and Ella, they made her a junior, so they moved her up a grade. And she was the youngest kid to graduate. So it was funny because she looks so young, and she's walking around to school, and she's wearing a class of 2023 hoodie or something like that, and everybody thought it was her boyfriend's. And she's like, no, this is mine. I'm a senior. And they're like, what? I couldn't believe it. So, but anyhow, so Ben had made some friends. He was pretty good at making friends. And this one friend in particular, Kyler, he'd been dating this girl, Emily, for years, and the nice young couple. Well, their mom and dad reached out to me because Kyler had proposed to Emily, and they just got married this past weekend on the 23rd. So Kyler's dad and his mom reached out to me and they're like, hey, we'd like you to make a knife, and we wanted something special for the wedding. I'm like, okay, well, what are you thinking of? It's like, well, nothing real too fancy, but maybe something to cut the cake and blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, I can make a carving knife. I had the steel. I got bar stock here. I keep bar stock on hand. So if somebody wants to actually, if I have a knife class, instead of giving them a water jetted blank, they get a bar piece of steel, and they actually learn what it's like to push through 3/16 D2 steel through a bandsaw and grind and everything else. But all my kitchen knives I make completely from stock. I don't have any of those water jetted. So yeah, I could do a carving knife and this and that and everything else. But while we're talking, and then I stopped for a second. I said, well, Mike, I says, I know Ben and Kyler and Emily, they're really close. They're really good friends. And Ben was at homecoming with them in 2023. That fall, he'd worked in the shop here for me for a while, and I'd made mention about that in the past, where he got laid off in October of 2023. And he ended up working in the shop helping me with knives for a while. And he was making pups like this one right here, for instance. This pup here, Ben helped shape and get ready, and then I did a blade profile. He would hand sand. He knew how to glue up knives, do things like that. And then he made one for himself. At the time, I have back there that he made for a girl he was dating at the time. But he started a bunch of knives for me. And because in 2024, I was going to go to the Northwest Overland rally up in Plain, Washington, and then travel around a little bit with Kasha. And I was hoping to bring knives and show that off. But I digress. So he started knives for me here in the shop. And one of the knives in particular, or some of the knives in particular, were kitchen knives. And so I had a Kitatsuki that was already cut and shaped and surface ground, and the tang was drilled out for pins. It needed me just to kind of clean it up a little bit and then do scribing and do blade profile and finish it. So I told Mike this, I told Kyler's dad this, and I said, if you're willing, I says, if you think you might want this one, I'd be willing to part with it, because I know that it would mean a lot. I would know it would mean a lot to Ben that Kyler and Emily got the knife, and that he'd helped with it. And I knew going into it that once Kyler and Emily knew about the knife, that it would be a really good family heirloom. And so Mike and his wife agreed. They're just happy about that. So that's what I did. So I made them a Kitatsuki. I did it with a really, really nice, grade A quality stabilized piece of curly koa, one of my favorite woods by chance. So I did it with curly koa, and Mike and his wife picked out pins for the knife, but they wanted steamboat on the one side, which is basically the mascot for the UW here, University of Wyoming, the Pokes and everything, and our mascot in general is steamboat. And on the other side, they wanted the family tree. So I did that, and then after I finished it all and did everything, I was going to put it in a box and like gift wrap it, but we wanted to open it, and they wanted to cut the cake with it. So I ended up I had some nice leather, some thin leather. It was only like 3 ounce, and I just made a nice little wrap for it, and I had some leather string that I did that. So it was something more, that they could present it with, and they could wrap it up and save it, use it for special occasions. But so we went to the wedding, and I presented that to him and everything, and I was a mess. But it was really nice to do that. But knowing that I don't have a son now to do that with, my son's, I'm not going to be able to make a knife for him like I'd hoped. When he got married, I'd make a knife for him, and then they would use Dad's knife to cut their cake. And that's why it's hard. And some days can be easier, and then you start feeling guilty that you're having good days, you have nice days. And in my case, not only do you feel bad about those nice days, but then you start to question why you're having those nice days. And you don't deserve those nice days. And then when you sit back and then you're like, okay, well, now I've got the whole other problem is being diagnosed with PTSD and the anxieties and the depression and everything that you end up with. It makes it hard to do stuff. And even though I went for a while for therapy to go talk to somebody, I don't know, I thought it was just me that didn't work. And then I was listening to a podcast, and the guy said, he's tried therapy before and it just didn't work for him. It just didn't connect. And he would talk with his friends. And I got one friend in particular, fella I met back in 2019, and we're a couple of days apart in age, but he's gotten to be such a good friend and a good sounding board. And ever since Ben died, we talked nearly daily since. And then it got to where, it was like every other day, and now it's like once a week. But it's still once a week. And once in a blue moon, if we can't talk during the week, we'll do like a Marco Polo. And it's like an app, you could do a video message. We'll do that. And that's helped a lot. And it brought me to another thing I heard about the 8 minutes. There was the one Simon something, I forgot his name, and he does this thing. He talks about it where he tells a story about a friend of his where they meet up and they're doing stuff, and she was upset that she was having a hard time and everything, and he's like, "Why didn't you say anything?" And she says, "Well, I did." And he shows up his phone. He's like, "No, this is you proved no, you didn't say anything." And she says, "Well, that's what I was asking." So they created this theory because he goes, and I don't know how again, I'm ad-libbing on most of this, but you can look it up. Some of you might have already seen it, but it's the theory of 8 minutes. And that if someone has 8 minutes just to sit and listen to someone that's having a problem, let them talk for 8 minutes, that makes them feel better, that it takes that off of their shoulders. It gives them that different feeling. And it's that 8 minutes that's so important. So he says him and his friend, she'll now just send him a message, hey, do you have a few minutes? Do you have 8 minutes? You know, that kind of thing. Now, granted, I like to say that I pride myself in staying within the 8 minutes, but I don't. I don't. When Keith calls me, or if I call him, we're on the phone for a good part of an hour, and I probably dominate most of that hour. But I do appreciate it, and it has helped a lot. But and having gone to the doctor, and the reason why that helped to a certain extent is because it did bring me to a realization of what some of the struggles I have or what happens. But I've studied psychology. I did it when I was in the sheriff's department. I worked in, did a lot of different things on the sheriff's department, but one of them was I worked in mental health. And I not only studied it in college, you know, when I went to night school, but I also was trained on the job, and then I would study throughout like a day or a week. I would read stuff, study stuff, do things to help better. I was trained through Cermak Hospital and all that in Cook County, Illinois. So I already had an idea on mental health, and having lost people that I've worked with both in Chicago and in Seattle, and talked with counselors and did things of that nature to learn stuff and how to de-escalate situations, how to talk to someone that might be suicidal. We were trained to do that kind of stuff in law enforcement. So you already have kind of an idea of what some symptoms are. So when you are suffering, you can self-diagnose in some way, shape, or form. You talk to a doctor, they can talk to you some more and be like, yes, this is what is bothering you. You are atypical. Name it, there it is. So I learned all that stuff. But after Ben's death, it brought back a lot of things that were memories, stuff that I had suppressed, both as a young child, as an adolescent, as a teen, and going into adulthood and law enforcement, having seen things that, you know, and I'll say this, yes, I'm a veteran-owned business. But I served like out of high school. I stayed 1 year out of high school and went to college, worked for my dad's company. I didn't like it. I needed a change. I needed something. I knew I needed something. I almost joined the Army. I joined the Marine Corps instead. I volunteered to do that during the first Gulf War. And I served like 91 to 93, something like that in there. I got out, honorable discharge, but I got out medical because I got denied medical attention when I was in the Marine Corps. That caused other health problems. They didn't want to keep me in at that time because they were cutting back the Marines. They're getting rid of Marines that had allergies, that had fallen arches. They had shoulder surgery or a knee surgery or something. They were getting rid of all of us. Didn't matter how many years you had in, they were just getting rid of us all. So I had a medical discharge, but I had an honorable discharge. So some guys got medical discharge, like just you were discharged other than honorable, or you just got a medical. I actually got an honorable discharge because of what the Marine Corps did to me and wasn't doing for me. The Navy stuck up for me and helped me out. So I didn't have a big illustrious career. I was motor T. I learned how to weld. I learned how to replace windshields and wiring harnesses and starters and stuff and Humvees and Cut-Vs and stuff like that. I didn't have an illustrious career. I've never taken VA benefits other than my GI Bill, and I don't claim any other status other than I was a Marine and I am a veteran-owned company, because I am. I've got my VA card, I've got my Wyoming Marine Corps plates, I have my endorsement, so everything is on the up and up. I'm just not a high-speed, low-drag, shoot-'em-up, sneaky Pete kind of guy. I'm not that. I got my traumas and my issues from law enforcement. Having spent over 10 years in law enforcement, working with two of the largest cities in the United States, one of the largest jails in the nation, and having to work in some of the worst crimes and seen some of the worst people humanity has to offer, that's what's kind of led me to some of the baggage that I have to date. But going into all that, and I had to segue to that for a second, but going into the trauma part of stuff is there's things that have happened to me when I was younger that I barely had any memory of anything. And when some of this stuff came up, it was shocking because it was almost like, imagine you're 50 years old and you've spent most of your life walking past a table with a puzzle and there's like 10 pieces missing. At first, maybe you're like, well, the pieces are missing, but after a while you walk past it, you never notice the pieces are missing. You grow up, you don't even live there anymore. That table's someplace else, and you have your own house, and you have a clean table, but now all of a sudden you realize you walk past your table and all of a sudden there's a piece sitting on your kitchen table. And you're like, where's that? Huh. And you're looking at it like, where does this come from? And then all of a sudden the next day you come by, there's another one there, and you're like, wow. And then, you might have 20 pieces in the course of just a week, and all of a sudden you're like, some of these pieces fit together. What's this about? And then those 20 pieces, just those little 20 pieces, that picture they give you, boom, now you realize where those 20 pieces belong. They belong to that puzzle from 30, 40, 50 years ago that was on your table when you were younger. And these pieces now fill that picture. Now all of a sudden you're like, wow, yeah, that's right. I remember that. I remember this. And I remember X, Y, and Z about this person or that person and so on. And that's where I ended up. Knowing this one individual in particular did spend time in jail for things that now I remember that happened to me. I have a difficult time talking about a lot of that. I've talked to a small group of people about it. And without getting into any details or anything, when you have problems and you're talking to some people and it seems to help to a certain extent, but you don't know what else to do. I've had so many people tell me, do this, Chad. I recently just had my kid's friends, she reached out to me and she's like, you know what, I really think you should do this because I would watch it. You have so much to tell us that I know that I would watch it and I would learn from it. And that felt so good to hear something like that from a young girl like that, sweetheart. My biggest problem is, though, I have family that watches these videos, and unlike just talking about problems and issues that you struggle with and that other people can learn from, I have this other burden that how much do I say or do? How much do I go down to this rabbit hole because my wife and my daughter, my cousins, or whomever else might watch this video, and then I don't want them to be getting dragged down. And I don't want my videos to cause them any more problems or heartache. Ella's told me I needed to get back onto YouTube and do some videos. I've had some friends that I've made as of late that are all former military and law enforcement, and they too have said, you've got to do videos. Do like podcast form, do something like that. And I struggle. Seriously, I can record this video 4 or 5 times and never put it out. I delete it. I don't know what's going to happen in this video. I know I've just deleted 2 others because I just can't put them out. But at some point, I guess I have to and start a new journey on this, like I did a couple of years ago where I changed the channel. It's not just CKNA Fatul anymore. That's my company, but it's not what this YouTube channel is about anymore. It's about me. It's about my family. It's about my friends. It's about experiences. And I guess now it's about this. What it's going to be titled or named or anything else, I don't know. If it's ever going to get watched, I don't know. But this is, I think, the next step I have to go through in the healing process. It's tough to see the company you've spent 11 years working on hard falling apart in front of you. It's tough to see people that don't work as hard as you do get more stuff, get more benefits, get more opportunities than you do. And I know a lot of you can probably relate to that. Why is it that I can work so hard at this job or do X, Y, and Z, but that person over there doesn't, and others know it, but they're succeeding more than me? Why is it I can spend 11 years and make knives and basically learn this all without anybody teaching me? Jeff helped me make my first knife, and he'll be the first one to say, I'm the only person to ever do this that he's ever taught. 11 years ago, this man took me in his shop and took a challenge and taught me how to make a knife. 11 years ago. He didn't teach me how to make a business. He didn't teach me how to make a Yeti or a pup or any of these other knives. I made one knife I thought would be kind of nice and cool, and I don't even like that knife shape and handle anymore because I've evolved and I've progressed so much as a maker and as an artist. And I've had to learn all this on my own. You could watch a few YouTube videos, but what are you gonna do watching YouTube? You gotta make it, you gotta learn this stuff. Some people don't have an aptitude for certain things, other people do. I'll never be a rocket scientist, a nurse. My wife will be the first to tell you I'm the wrong person to work in the medical profession. But it's tough to see that. Like I spoke earlier about the company that did all this. 5 years ago, before that company even became the company it is now, 5 years, 6, 7 years before that, I knew what I wanted to do in Washington State. In 2018 and 2019, I said, this is what I want to do. And I had somebody talk to me, and I forgot his name, but he runs a company, he runs a social media platform called Dangerous But Good. And I think it's Brandon or something like that. I forgot, and I apologize, but we only spoke once, and that was in 2018. And he wanted a bunch of knives, and I wish I could make those. I wish I could make him those knives now. But we don't talk, and I don't know if he knows or follows me or anything anymore. I follow his social media platform. I don't think he does for me anymore. But he wanted 200 knives. But he wanted 200 knives that he can make a large, he wanted to retail them. So you're looking at 30, 40% markup. Well, because I was in my small shop in Washington, I couldn't make those knives. I couldn't do that. I was doing knives for Warrior Poet Society. I could barely keep up with that. And he told me after we were talking about all, and I says, what I need is people to invest in me to do stuff. I don't need someone that says, I'll buy 200 knives from you or 100 knives from you at $150 or $100 a piece, because I don't make that kind of knife. And he didn't have that comprehension to what I was going through or doing. But it was what he said that struck me so hard and it hurt, because in a way it was true. He says, Chad, you're so talented and you make great knives. He says, but you'll be forever cursed because you'll never be able to teach someone else how to make what you make, and you'll never be able to grow your business as big as you'd probably want it to be. And he was right. The truth hurt. And I tried to get it to grow. I wish I had, like this fella did, that somebody from Amazon would come and invite me and say, hey, I'll be part of your business, or get invited to some big secret powwow with all these multi-millionaires and billionaires down south someplace. And somebody says, hey, I love what you do with your knives. Have you ever thought about going, making production knives? And be like, yeah, I own the domain. I own the social media platform, and I know how to build up a company. Knowing what I know now, I know how to do that. But I don't have $1 million. I don't have $500,000 to do it, and it's only me. I know what I need to get. I need the capital. I need the money to do that. Then I need the person. You don't have to be a knife maker. You have to be someone that knows how to do and can type more than just with 6 fingers like me, that can program a CAD and a CNC. Then I need someone that knows how to screw things together. I can teach people how to do certain things. If I had a team, I could have 6 people, and I could take CK Knife and Tool in a different direction. And I could keep making custom knives like this, or a kitchen knife for a wedding. But then I also can make Dangerous But Good, and Warrior Poet Society, and Coyote Works, and Kit Badger, and everybody else. They're batches of 100, 200, 300 knives, because there's companies that'll make you batches, but you got to buy like 10,000 units from them. I know there's a spot for me in the knife making world for that, but I don't have that. I don't have that part to start out. So So when I sit back and I deal with all the things I deal with, and you try to be a good Christian and you try to be like, and I don't dislike or have any animosity towards anybody like that in those companies. It's just really hard to stay positive and know that, you know, I'm the one that's got cuts in my hands. I'm the one that my wife knows how I feel after spending 30, 40 hours grinding blade profiles and hand sanding knives. The people that have gone through my knife shop and my knife classes, they know what it's like to make a knife just at such a small scale that I can make 50, 60, 80, 100 knives a year by hand and still do other projects. And then to see somebody that just doesn't do what I do, and they become so successful, and I don't get that opportunity, and after 11 years seeing my company falling apart in front of me, on top of the fact that I lost my son, and on top of the fact that you're dealing with all the things you're dealing with now after that, yeah, it's not easy. So I'm going to let you guys go. I've got so many other things that people have wanted me to talk about and show, both in knives, products, things of that nature, and maybe just talking. I don't know how many of these videos I'm going to do or what I'm going to do, but I'm going to take the advice of all these people that have been telling me to do this for the last 6 months. And I'm going to put out these really boring, eye-gougingly stupid videos or something, and then see where chips will fall. But with that said, I do appreciate it. Thank you very much for everything. Thank you for the support. I'll try to do what I can to answer questions when I get them. And I'm just going to keep trucking away at knives. Maybe next video I'll show you some more knives. I probably threw some videos or pictures in here, but maybe I'll have some more knives to show you later. As always, the website's open for apparel, t-shirts, hats, hoodies. I got some flannel shirts now on the website. I got my coffee mugs on the website. That always helps. Everything helps. And again, look for the knives in the homeless category, the homeless knives category, to see what might be available to purchase. Until the next video, gang, thank you very much. I appreciate all the support, and we'll see you later. Bye.